password before I forget. There we go. So I do just want to welcome everybody to our first briefing of the school year. And we do know, we're seeing in the chat, and we know that these past few months have been extremely difficult for you all, and that you've been working harder than ever to ensure that students across the state have access to quality instruction, whether that's in a virtual environment, a traditional environment, or some kind of combination of the two. And we're going to spend the bulk of our time today digging into some resources that we think will be really helpful for you in supporting your teachers while they're designing and delivering virtual instruction. But before we do that, I want to briefly review some of the key features of this virtual platform that we're using today called Remo. We're likely any of our virtual briefings will be held on this platform. We found it to be super conducive to collaboration. It's a pretty cool platform. So I just want to go over a few basics with you before we get started. So in Remo, there are two modes, the floor and the stage. Right now, we're in stage mode, which means that there's a presenter on stage. And actually, right now, there are 3 presenters on stage. You should see me, Christine, and Cindy. When we're in stage mode, your cameras and your microphones are turned off, and you do not have the ability to turn them on. However, the chat feature remains open. And to access the chat, you just click on the chat icon that's at the bottom of your screen, and you can chat with the full group using the general chat room, or you can privately chat individuals by clicking on their names and chatting with them one-on-one. So right now I'm sharing my screen and Christine is sharing her screen. So you should also see 2 little windows that look like PowerPoint screens. You can enlarge any screen by clicking on the 4 arrows that are in the upper right side of the window. That's going to expand the window. And if you want to shrink the window, you can click those 4 arrows again and it'll shrink back down, or you can just click escape and that will take you back to the stage where you can see all of the windows. At certain points throughout the workshop, we're going to switch to floor mode. Right now we're in stage mode, but later we'll switch to floor mode. And when you're on the floor, you'll be sitting at a virtual table, which allows you to participate in breakout conversations with your table mates. To participate in those conversations, though, you either need to have your microphone or your camera or both turned on. If you have neither turned on, we'll see that you're sitting at the table, but we won't see your face and we won't be able to hear anything that you're saying. So if at any point during floor mode, you want to move to a different table, you will just double click on any empty seat at the table where you want to go. Right now, you can't see the tables and you can't move about the floor because we're in stage mode. Don't worry, when we go back to floor mode, I'll go over these directions again for you. And if you're having difficulty navigating at any point, you can chat with us using the chat feature, or you can request assistance from Remo's live support by clicking on the pink Need Help bubble, which is on the bottom left side of your screen. They're very responsive, which is one of the reasons that we really love this platform. I will say, though, that most technical issues can be resolved by refreshing your screen or going out of the meeting and coming back in. 9 times out of 10, that will solve the issue. All right, now that we've gone through some of the technical aspects and gotten some of those things out of the way, I want to just briefly review who's here and run through the agenda. We do have some new people on the call, some people who are new to the group because they're recently taking over as grant managers or specialists in the office. So many of you know Cecilia Rowe. She's our Director of Instructional Assessment, Professional Learning, Title II, and ELA. She's on the call with us today. I'm Heather. I'm the Coordinator of Professional Learning, Instructional Assessment, and Title IIA. We also have with us today 2 national experts, Christine Volker from Quality Matters and Cindy Hamblin from the Virtual Learning Leadership Alliance. And they're going to be sharing with us their recently updated national standards for quality online teaching and the corresponding professional learning portal, which is brand new. I think the soft launch was just last week. So you guys are kind of seeing things before anyone else in the nation. Once they've given us an overview of the standards and the portal, you'll have some time with your group, your table mates, to explore some of these resources and discuss which resources might be useful to your school system in supporting teachers in providing virtual instruction. Then we are going to hear from Jen and Dan from the MSDE team. They're both specialists in the Office of Professional Learning. You're going to hear from them about 2 courses that they've been working on really hard over the summer that they are developing for coaches and mentors. And then the last few minutes of the meeting, we have reserved for any Title II questions that may have bubbled up that you haven't had a chance to discuss. Most of you send those questions via email, so I don't expect that there will be too many, but we want to make sure we take time for that. So this is just a quick little summary of the agenda. If there aren't any questions, I don't see any questions in the chat. I think I'm just going to turn it over to our special guests, Christine and Cindy. So for Christine and Cindy, I'm going to head off stage, but if there's a question that pops up in the chat that it doesn't look like you guys noticed, I'm going to come back up on stage and let you know that there's a question in the chat for you. Okay?
Great.
Thank you. Sure. Bye-bye.
All right. Well, hi, everyone. Thanks for having us join you remotely, especially on this really fun platform. My name is Christine Voker. I am the K-12 Program Director for the nonprofit organization Quality Matters, or QM. And as some of you know, QM works with schools and districts to provide them with quality assurance tools and processes. We also certify online and blended courses through rigorous course review. I actually live and used to work in Calvert County. I also ran a statewide Title II partnership grant prior to coming to QM. So if I seem familiar to you, that would be the reason why. So I'm really happy to be here today.
And good morning, everyone. I'm in Illinois, so just an hour earlier. So maybe see me drinking more coffee this morning. But I'm glad to be here to talk about the standards. I am with the director for the Virtual Learning Leadership Alliance, sometimes just called Alliance or VLLA. We're an organization currently of 15 state virtual schools or large consortiums. And the organization was formed to come together, the leaders and different staff within their programs, to come together to collaborate, share expertise, with the real mission of ensuring quality online learning. So this project with QM in revising the national standards was just a natural fit for us. And at this time during the pandemic, really working hard to ensure that quality remains key as we move to so many different versions of online or remote learning. So glad to be here with you today.
Great. So Heather and Jennifer invited us here today to share a little about the background and the history of the standards, as well as the process that the community participated in to revise and release these new sets. And most importantly, ways in which you might leverage the standards for use in your local school districts. So before we dive in, Cindy and I wanted to get an idea of your familiarity with the National Standards for Quality Online Learning. So go ahead and put the number representing how you feel about them in the chat. So 1 being this is the first time you've ever even heard of them, which is why we're here today, so that's okay. 2, you have some familiarity with them. Maybe you've downloaded them or you've taken a look at them on the website. And 3, you've used them with your staffs. And maybe like me and Cindy, you even have a copy of them right here on your desk. Great, I see lots of 1s, 2s. I see a 1.5. Some more 2s, some more 1s.
Guess I popped off for a moment, but it looks like a nice balance between 1 and 2 to me.
Yeah, that's what I'm noticing. And we're hoping today that we can move you To a 2, definitely. We'll definitely get to 2 today, but hopefully move you more towards the 3 mark. So great. So again, we're happy to be introducing these to most of you today, but also to be telling you more about how you can utilize them with your staffs. So to start, I guess you might be familiar with the national standards for quality online courses, programs, and teaching, but maybe as they were released by IIA, the International Association for Online Learning. So these standards were used extensively by schools, districts, and organizations. They were looking for guidance on how to start up online learning programs, and also as a benchmark for quality course and programs, as well as for teaching. And as you can see on your screen, the national standards for quality online courses and for teaching, well, those were last released in 2011 before this revision. And the national standards for quality online programs, well, that was last revised in 2009. So while they proved to stand the test of time, as the case is with all good products, there's always room for improvement, especially when time keeps moving forward and advances are uncovered through research. So for IIA, they had some changing priorities, and now they're actually known as the Aurora Institute. And that while they couldn't deny the importance of these standards, they needed to pass the torch. So this is where QM and VLLA entered the picture. So
Chris,
both
I'm sorry to interrupt.
IIA and bring different skills to the partnership. So IIA, they approached us both, not only because of the relationship we have with one another, but because they knew QM's background with standards, revision processes of development and deployment, and they knew the VLLA's strength in program leadership and oversight, including the course and facilitation components. Through this project, we formed an even greater partnership that we had than before. And we knew there was an urgency to getting these updated based on those revision dates that I showed you earlier. So we needed to get to work.
Chris, I'm not sure if you are noticing, but your slides are not advancing on the screen. Are they advancing for you?
They're advancing for me, yeah.
I see a slide that says revision process. Is that where what we should see?
That should be where you should see.
I still see the first one. I apologize. So I posed that question, and so maybe some are seeing it, some are not. So
okay, just so everyone knows, you do have access to this PowerPoint in the e-community. It's there. So if for some reason you're not seeing the slides advance the way that Cindy's not seeing them, A, I would try refreshing your screen. And B, if that's not working, then you can pull up the slides in the e-community and kind of follow along yourself. Okay. This platform does take a lot more bandwidth, that more so than others. So that could be part of the issue. All right, I'm going away now.
Yeah. Cindy and I have never presented on this platform, and we present a lot. So, you know, I've never seen this happen to her. So, all right, she's back. Well, she'll be sharing her slides in the next round, so we'll hopefully that'll go a little bit better. But if not, I'll try and stay on a little bit longer. So. So you should see the slide, the revision process. So once the project was approved by our organizations, the first order of business was to form a leadership team. And that leadership team is responsible for developing the vision of each standard set, the national standards for quality online programs, teaching, and courses. And for they were also responsible for like adjusting the structure and composition of the standards throughout the process. So the leadership team, that consists of Cindy and I, we're the project managers, the chairs and co-chairs for each standard set, and a number of experts to help shape the standards revision before the standards work groups actually began on their individual standards. And then now they provide oversight and decision-making guidance going forward, and also when the work groups start revising standards again. So the leadership team reflects a variety of perspectives that represent supplemental and full-time online learning and blended learning, as well as public, private, and non-governmental organization perspectives. Also, some of the members from the team, they worked on the IIA standard revisions, and therefore they bring that historical perspective to help with the revision support and guidelines. So based on these guidelines that we put into place, you'll see standards that are research supported, they're flexible, so they allow for unique organizations to implement the standards based on their practices. So other people aren't seeing the slides advance either? Sorry, I'm looking at the chat.
And I see a slide that says the new standards are.
Yes.
Yeah.
That should be right.
Yeah, I think we're good.
Okay, so they're flexible. Like I said, they're revised and updated on a set schedule by researchers and practitioners in the field of online learning. And the revision cycle is planned to keep the indicators fresh and current. And they're recommended for use in development, also for evaluation and continuous improvement of online programs, online teaching, and courses. Aside from the leadership team, we also had widespread participation on the revisions, and you should be seeing a chart on your screen that shows that widespread participation, and we really tried hard to get that within each of the contributor groups. The types of organizations they represented range from small and large districts, again, state agencies and statewide online learning programs, to content and technology providers and institutions of higher education from all around the country and actually around the world. So to start the revisions, we sent out a survey open to everyone in the community, and the types of questions there included items like, is this indicator useful to you? Should it remain in the standard set? What would you recommend, if any, for changes to the standard set? And all of this feedback was then shared with the revision teams, and that helped to inform the teams about the ways that the standards have been used in the past, and also which areas needed just a little bit more TLC. So we also commissioned a literature review for each standard set, and these can all be downloaded both from the QM and NSQ websites, which we'll introduce a little bit later. And then the findings from the literature review were also passed on to the work groups. So each review identified themes among research and practices worth noting as the online learning has evolved. And so one important thing to note is that we found after doing the program and teaching standards revisions, because we did those first, that the work groups that worked most effectively were those that were led by both a practitioner and also a researcher. So we were mindful in making sure that when we then did the course standards, because those came next, we made sure that those work groups were set up following the same model. And then once we had each of the work groups do their revisions, the chairs then took these revisions and massaged them into a draft, and the draft was then provided to reviewers. And those reviewers then volunteered their time to review the standards indicators, the explanations, the examples, and this proved to be such an integral part of the process because the feedback that we received from the reviewers was invaluable. They took a pretty extensive survey too. They looked at the standard sets both holistically, and then they looked more closely, zooming in on each indicator. And that was a pretty big job because we asked them to look at each indicator and indicate whether or not it was measurable, specific, valid, but also if it had an associated complete explanation as well as specific and relevant examples. So they were also asked to provide additional examples where needed. So we were definitely grateful to them in this whole process. So the culmination of all of this hard work are the standard sets that you can see here. And now that you know how they came to be, we're going to take a look at what you can expect when you're using these 3 standard sets. So the first one I'm going to talk about is actually the National Standards for Quality Online Programs. And this was updated during 2018, and then it was released in March of 2019. And remember, this standard set was last updated in 2009, so that was 10 years prior. So there were a lot of changes that needed to be made. So this new edition, it doesn't include a rating scale. We took that away because we wanted it to be more flexible for individual organizations who were applying the standards. The revision removed 2 standards, it reworked 2, and it overall gave a reduction from those standards themselves from 19 to 14. And then the indicators were reduced from 109 to 72. And then the teams working on the National Standards for Quality Online Programs, they recommended that we included 14 standard categories. And you can see them all on your screen, maybe. But however, for most of you in your current situations, I wanted to let you know that the ones that really might be helpful to you in this new normal that we have are standard G, which is equity and access, H, which is integrity and accountability, I, curriculum and course design, J, instruction, also assessment and learner performance, faculty and staff support, which could be helpful to you all in your roles, and also learner and parent guardian support. So overall, there are, as I said, 14 of those standards, and they are supported by 72 indicators. So there's a lot of meat in there. And here's an example from standard N, which is program evaluation. But I wanted to show you this because I wanted you to know that each of the standard sets, they follow this same kind of layout where you'll see the measurable indicator, and in this case, it's N2. And then it's followed by the explanation and examples. So that'll help you and your staff in its implementation. So next I'm going to talk about the National Standards for Quality Online Courses. And this one was last updated in 2011, and we just released this just about a year ago in October of 2019. So notable changes to this one, the revision added 2 standards, and so it went from 5 to 7, and 8 new indicators were introduced. So overall, we streamlined it down from 53 to 45, even though, you know, we took some out. So as I said earlier, some of you might be familiar with the old IIA call standards. So that had 5 sections, and you can see that they were separated into content, instructional design, student assessment, technology, and course evaluation and support. The teams working on the National Standards for Quality Online Courses, they recommended 7 standard categories. So the standards in the NSQ online courses are labeled as course overview and support, content, instructional design, learning assessment, accessibility and usability, technology, and course evaluation. And those 2 that are highlighted on your screen, accessibility and usability, and course overview and support, those are 2 new standards that were introduced in this version. So the biggest change that you'll notice, if you were used to those old ones, was that we pulled out what used to be D10, which was the only accessibility standard in the IIA call standards, and made it its own. It was the only indicator. We made it its own standard with, I think, 5 indicators underneath it. So it's a whole new standard, so that we could really provide equitable opportunities for learners. So you'll see there, that's what it now looks like with the accessibility and usability. I'm going to move on for the sake of time because, so you'll see here that these are laid out the same as the program standards. So you'll see the measurable indicator here is labeled as B6, and it's followed by an explanation and an example. You might notice that the indicator itself, in this particular example, it has an asterisk at the end. That asterisk just indicates that this is an indicator that directly correlates to a specific review standard in the QM K-12 rubric 5th edition. So in some cases, it's the indicator itself, and sometimes it reflects text from the explanations, text in the explanations or examples that come straight from the QM K-12 rubrics annotations. So the exact correlation is available on the resources section of the NSQ website. The National Standards for Quality Online Courses, it works in tandem with that QM rubric. And the QM rubric has additional annotations that expand it. And more information there can be found on the QM website. But as some of you are aware, LEAs in Maryland need to only provide online courses that appear in the Maryland approved list. And QM is one of the ways for vendors to get on that list, or school districts that have their that have created their own courses. Once they get their courses QM certified, that is one way that they can go on there on that list. So lastly, the last set that I wanted to talk about today, before we let you dive in a little bit, is these national standards for quality online teaching that were last updated in 2011, and now they were just released in 2019. So here you'll see just a rundown of what was changed there. So 2 standards were removed, 2 standards were reworked. It used to, in this standard set, it used to have teacher knowledge and understanding and teacher abilities, and now they're just all measurable indicators there. So one thing that you'll see is that there are 8 online teaching standards. So the standards include professional responsibilities, digital pedagogy, community building, learning engagement, digital citizenship, diverse instruction, assessment and measurement, and then also instructional design. But this standard is kind of it's more of a optional standard due to the fact that instructional design does not always fall under teaching responsibilities. In some schools and districts it does, and in some it doesn't. So we made that one optional. This slide shows you an example of just the indicators from Standard D, learner engagement. So you'll see the indicator there, and then the explanations and examples following suit with everything else. So now that more and more schools and districts are using the standards, we are starting to collect additional use cases, which will be shared on the NSQ website and our mailing list. But online teachers can utilize the standards and indicators and reflect on their own instructional process. So that's one way we've seen people use the online teaching standards. Professional development staff, they're using these standards to evaluate, enhance, and expand professional learning opportunities offered to online instructors. And then VLLA members at Cindy's group, they're using these standards to review and revise online instructors' evaluation tools. So, one thing that Cindy and I did want to mention before we dive a little bit more into the standards is that both traditional, remote, and online classes share some common elements, such as teachers, students, assignments. You know, it's how you interact with those elements that is going to be different. So the National Standards for Quality Online Teaching those standards can support face-to-face classroom teachers as they move to remote and or online learning. So we know that you guys in Maryland are in that remote situation. So these can be helpful to you. So we did want to share that some of the ways, some of the things that we've been hearing from the field are that people are looking for student engagement information. And so some of the standards there that can help you are standard D, which is the learner engagement, and B3, and then communication with and among students and the teacher. And you guys will have these slides so that you'll be able to dive in a little bit more and see how these specific indicators can actually help you in your districts. Netiquette and safety and privacy when learning from home or online, and then accessibility and support for diverse learners. Cindy, did I miss anything on that slide there? I think she's frozen. Okay. So a lot of people have been asking us how they can download the standards and get involved in the next revisions, and also how they can support the standards. So I mentioned some of the resources that can be found on the website, like the literature review. So the URL is at the bottom of this screen. It's nsqol.org. And it's really easy to both become a supporter or send us a message letting us know that you'd like to contribute to the community effort, and also to download the standards. So when you go to the website, this is kind of like I guess this is what you'll see when you go to the website. When you go to the website and you click on a specific standard set from that standard link at the top, you'll see that you have an option where you can download the standards, but then you can also view them on your screen. So you can download a PDF of the standards, which will look like this, without the coffee stains on it. Or you can click on the X's and the plus signs, and it'll drop down those standards so that you can view them on the screen. Okay. So what we're going to do now is to give you a little time to explore and reflect. And I think that's what we had decided to do, right, Heather? And then once you have a little time to go in and take a look at the standards, and then think about how, how they would work with some of the things that you use already in your districts, then we're going to come back and show you some more pieces to the puzzle that we're excited to introduce to you. And Cindy's going to go through that part. So I did have this slide to go back to the breakout room questions for you, Heather.
Yep. So I am going to post our breakout room questions in the chat right now, actually. So these are our 2 breakout room questions that we want you to talk about in just a moment when we go back to our table. So the first one is, how might the NSQOT be used by teachers, administrators, coaches and mentors, your LEA professional learning office? Kind of think about all of those roles and how the standards may be used by each person or each role. And then the second question is, in preparation for this year's virtual or hybrid or remote instruction, what standards have been a focus for your LEA for capacity building for your teachers? Were you really focusing on engaging with student engagement, engaging with parents, equitable access? Which standards did you really emphasize in your preparations? And then are there any standards that maybe have not been addressed by your LEA that you think should be? Because our next step is going to be to explore some resources that could help you in some capacity building in those areas that you've targeted as maybe areas where you see some room for growth. So in just a moment, we're going to go to our tables, and these are going to be the questions that we want you to address. Remember that when we break out to a table, you can move tables by double clicking on any empty seat. I've labeled the tables by district, and some of your tables are, or some of your district groups are big enough that you're by yourself. So like Baltimore County has its own table, but then some of the smaller districts we group together so that you have some other people to talk to from other districts. So once you've gone out and broken into your groups, you guys can decide how you want to use the next 10 minutes to explore and chat. If you want to do it as a full group, if you want to explore for 5 minutes on your own and then come back as a group, that's up to your group to decide. So here we go. All right, we are back. So I was wondering if you guys could just take a moment and drop in the chat a standard or two that you maybe think your district could spend a little bit more time or energy or capacity building, maybe an area for growth, a standard that wasn't a strong focus in your preparation leading up to the fall that maybe you think now could be. If you wouldn't mind just dropping that in the chat. Equity always. Yeah, okay, Jennifer. Monitoring learner progress, providing supports. Yep. Individuals with disabilities and underserved groups. Digital citizenship, right. Excellent. All right, I'm going to hop off and turn it back over to Christine and Cindy.
Thank you, Heather. And so I'm going to try my best to go forward with the presentation. I am having some bandwidth issues, so I'm going to turn my camera off now, and hopefully that will keep me from freezing up and losing you all. My part of what I'm going to share, I'm going to share my screen in a second, is twofold. I'm going to share what one program has done to roll out the standards with the staff. So they've got some creative strategies for building awareness about the standards and steps for implementation. And then, of course, as Heather gave you a heads up at the beginning, going to demo the portal, brand new professional learning portal that utilizes the NSQ online teaching standards. So I'll hopefully be able to do that. So I'm going to turn my camera off and then share my screen. All righty. And give me a heads up, Chris, if things go awry. All right, so what I'm going to be sharing is not my model, but Virtual Virginia is a state virtual school and a member of the VLLA. Sarah Warnick directs their professional learning activities for the program. And so today I'm going to share her model for how they're supporting the rollout of the NSQ online teaching with their faculty. And I hope for those of you here that are dealing with other teachers and faculty that this might be helpful. You might get some good ideas from what Sarah has done. So Sarah and her team put together 8 steps for announcing and introducing the standards to their staff. From just the initial announcement of, oh, we've got new online teaching standards, to, in their case, they were going forward with implementing a new evaluation model or set. I plan today really just to talk through what they did in steps 1 through 4, the announcement, and then getting to the alignment of the current practices with the NSQ standards. So in a faculty meeting, she actually introduced the new revised standards, actually did this in 2019, and to gauge her staff in discussing the standards, a Padlet application was used. So I know many of you probably have used this application. They left this up for a bit of time with 2 posing questions. What stands out to you after reviewing the standards? And then how can we apply these standards, in their case, to the Virtual Virginia current practices? So again, gave an opportunity for teachers just to explore, get familiar, and respond to those questions. The next step in their exploration process of the standards was twofold. First, they did a crosswalk between their Virginia teaching standards, and I know I'm sure Maryland has your teaching standards, and then the online standards. So you can see in that one image where they've shown the crosswalk between the different standard areas and how that aligned with the NSQ online teaching. They also began taking a look at their orientation course. How do they train prospective new online teachers? And so started to show alignment to that orientation course to see, are there missing holes, are there gaps, or just again to I guess represent that the activities teachers were doing were best practices for quality. During their annual summer expo, like a conference, they had their teachers examine the NSQ online teaching to their current instructional practices. So not only from a larger perspective, where did they see the crosswalk, but asked them to look at each of the standards, and the following questions were posed. Which NSQs are represented in the evaluation model now, or evaluation document, and where? Which standards are we meeting that may not be represented in the Virtual Virginia evaluation document? So what things are we doing that the standards talk about, but we're really not represented in our evaluation model? And which standards might we explore as a faculty to continue promoting quality? So again, getting the teachers engaged, and this time reflecting on their own practices. Of course, their end model was to update their evaluation instrument. So they did a crosswalk on the instruments, trying to show where the online teaching standards fit. One thing I thought was really interesting of how they ensured that NSQ online teaching was in front of the teachers throughout the year. Any of their activities, whether it was discussion boards, whether it was PLC activity or actual training, anytime they offered something, they did show where the activity they were engaged in was aligned to the standards. So you see in September, they did a case study discussion on live session engagements, showing the alignment to B1 is around digital pedagogy, D4 is part of learner engagement. So to wrap that up, I just thought it would be great to see an actual model of how a program took the standards, and they really took a year to introduce, to engage the teachers in reflecting on their practice before they really got into the update of their evaluation instrument. If you've got any questions, just put it in the chat and we can come back to that at the end. I'm now going to jump into this professional learning portal. Chris and I, as Heather said, we've been very excited. This has been about a year in progress and getting ready for this. But as a next step with the NSQ online teaching, we really wanted to provide an opportunity for a source for quality professional learning resources. So this learning portal is for educators to reflect on their teaching practices and supporting students online. It's based on the results of a self-reflection assessment tool that is taken for each of the 8 standard sets. And then as a result of that just brief self-assessment, the system recommends personalized professional learning resources for the teachers. We're in phase 1, meaning that right now the resources are centered around those provided by the Virtual Learning Leadership Alliance and QM. But as we move forward with this, we will be accepting more and more professional learning resources as soon as we have a vetting process. So we're just in the phase 1 for the project. So let me jump to the actual, here's the portal entering. If, as a new user, and this is free, there's no cost to utilizing this NSQ portal, you will have to just answer a few questions about your name, email, and years of experience, I think, are the questions that they ask. I'm going to go ahead and go into my area that I've already, so this is my portal. And you can see, just like what Chris showed, here are the 8 standards for online teaching. You'll see some say click to start. You'll see instructional design says review details. Instructional design says that since I have already completed the self-reflection tool. And that's based on the 6 indicators within instructional design. So let me show you what that would look like. I'm going to start with community building, which you can say is in progress. So I've started it. So if once you create an account, you'll select one of the standards you're interested in or like to see some professional learning resources. As a first step, it will take you to our questionnaire. Again, very simple. These are questions that align to the indicators for each standard set. So in this case, I employ learner-centered instructional strategies and current practices that leverage technology for learning collaboration. So this is in the area of community building. So I would select that and then go to the next question. I'm going to go back now to instructional design because that is one that I've already completed the self-assessment. So now for this one, so there's a self-assessment for every standard. In instructional design, since I've completed it, I'm actually going to show you what the results look like. So first thing I will see is really a awareness summary. There are questions in there about how I feel about my instructional practice for instructional design or community building, and then what I show based on how I responded to the questions. So in this case, you can see I have a little higher awareness in my own mind about instructional design than what my response to my questions were. There is the opportunity for you to ask your peers to share what they think, how you fit within your that particular area. So that's the peers. Next, this is where you're getting to the personalized professional. We are, as a community, just really starting to align our resources to the indicator level. You're going to see more right now at the standard level. It's just easier to show that alignment, but we do have some at the indicator level. So you can see at the standard level. And right now, as I mentioned, these resources are coming from VLLA and Quality Matters. As we move forward, you will see more resources from other organizations. So let's, maybe I'm interested in this designing remote lessons. That's going to take me in. This is offered by Idaho Digital Learning Alliance. I see at the top, it's a video. There's not continuing ed credits associated, and there's no cost. If there are continuing ed credits or cost, it would show that. When I select view, I am actually going out to IDLA's site where they're hosting this video, which happens to be on YouTube. And there it goes.
Hello, I'm Lisa Cable. I'm an online English instructor with IDLA.
Okay, so again, it's taking you directly to that resource for you to utilize. You can come back and then utilize the other resources and spend time as you want in building your skill set. 2 other features, and then I'm going to kind of wrap the demo up for now, is it tells you where you fall within that assessment question, those questions, compared to others. And then at the very end, there are some great reflection questions. So after you've taken time to spend time looking at the resources, you are able then to go in and see how that might reflect and enhance your practice. So that gives you just a quick demo of this resource. I'd encourage you to utilize it. It is brand new. It is free. Just create a profile for yourself and then start learning. And the website is, again, is NSQ. Let me go back to the presentation. NSQ to know me with a dot in between. To know.me.
I put it in the chat.
Okay, great. So it's time for questions.
Yeah, we are going to give you guys a chance to explore, but Cindy and Christine do need to hop off. So before you go exploring through the portal, which we are going to give you time to do, are there any questions for Christine or Cindy? You can either type your question in the chat, or you can just say, call me on stage or call me up, and I can bring you up on stage to ask your question orally to the group, if there are any questions before they hop off. No? Okay. Oh, yep, just a thank you. Okay, well, I do want to thank you both, Christina and Cindy, on behalf of the entire group. It was super useful information. And I think once they really start digging into these resources, I think we're going to be able to get a lot of use out of the NSQs, but also the resources in the portal as well. So thank you so much, and we'll say goodbye.
You're welcome. And thank you all. Keep up the good work. Your school districts are, you're really working hard, so we appreciate that.
Thank you all. Stay safe.
Okay, so for the rest of us, what I'd like you to do is to take maybe 15 minutes at your tables and explore either the standards, the portal, whatever resources you'd like to take that time for. We are going to come back here at 11:20. Let's see, it's 11:10. I said 15 minutes, so 11:25-ish. We'll reconvene as a full group. And what I'd like to do is to hear from a district or two about any next steps that this has inspired for you. So what might you do with the NSQ? What might you do with the professional learning portal? If this is generating some ideas from you, I'd love to hear about those as a full group. So we'll meet back here at 11:25 for right now. Take the 15 minutes to explore at your tables the standards and the professional learning portal. If you need any help, you can hop over to the technical assistance table. I'll be sitting there. So you can just double click and hop over to our table, or I can come find you. So we'll be back at 11:25 as a group. Okay, we are back. So what I'd love to do is to hear from a group or two about any ideas that this process has kind of bubbled up, any ideas that have bubbled up for you based on this process. So how might you use the NSQ or the professional learning portal moving forward? So if you have an idea that you'd like to share with the group, can you just write in the chat, call on me or pick me, and I'll bring you up on stage with me, and you can kind of share your idea with the group. That way you don't have to type a very long idea in the chat box. Love to hear from a person or two. Don't be shy. Come on. Nobody. Okay. Well, that's disappointing. I was hoping that we could hear from you guys about any ideas that this work has inspired, but maybe your gears are still winding and you're still kind of generating some ideas. So hopefully at our next briefing, we could hear from anyone who maybe has been able to move forward with any ideas that this has generated for the future. So oops, it looks like Bridget is adding something. So she might offer this as an option during their scheduled PD or PLC time. I guess what you mean, Bridget, is to have the teachers kind of self-select a path and kind of work through the portal themselves. Thanks for sharing. Okay, Debbie says there's a need to kind of crosswalk this with the Danielson framework. Yep, absolutely. Thanks, Bridget and Debbie, for sharing. Okay. Oh, Joni says they're going to use this in the future when they're training teachers either for COVID or for future use. Good, I'm glad this is helpful. Leslie'd like to introduce the standards in their upcoming consultations and review alignment with the school improvement planning tool. Great idea. Great idea. Good point, Jen. Good. I like the idea of another crosswalk, Sharonda. Okay, good. So I'm glad you guys were able to pull a couple of ideas out of this for moving forward with capacity building, either for your teachers, your administrators, your professional learning staff. Good. Lots of ideas rolling in. Excellent. So let me share my screen really quickly here. We are going to move forward in our agenda. We are a little ahead of schedule, which is good. In just a moment, Jen and Dan are going to come up on stage, and they are going to share with you the two courses that they've been developing over the summer for coaches and mentors. So I think Jen's going to come up first. Everything that Jen is sharing with you is in our e-community. So I think I'm going to share the flyer. Here we go. Yep, here's Jen's. Oh no, that's the, give me 1 second. So in the e-community, just so you guys are aware, this is where you can find all the materials in the e-community in the September 22nd briefing agenda. So you'll see we've got our agenda for the day, we've got the NSQ presentation, and then these are the flyers and syllabi that we're sharing right now. So let me pull up the flyer here.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. So we are excited to announce a new course that is open to all Maryland mentors and coaches. The title of this course is Shrinking the Change, Leveraging Feedback to Improve School Culture. It's a year-long course that will begin next month, the end of October, and will conclude in June. This course explores the impact that small changes in feedback practices can have on a school's culture. In this course, participants will begin by analyzing their school's feedback culture. This will require them to collect a body of evidence that captures the current reality of their school's culture of feedback. As the course progresses, participants will explore the neuroscience behind the human's response to feedback. They will reflect on their own coaching beliefs and implement new feedback strategies that promote their clients' autonomy and self-reflection. And in the final session, the participants will reflect on the shifts that they've made in their practices and evaluate their impact on the school's feedback culture. The learning design of this course has 3 major components. There are 5 community of practice meetings that will occur bi-monthly on this virtual platform, Remo, and those meetings will take place from 3:30 to 5:30. The second component is the prep work, and that is the material that should be completed prior to each of those community of practice meetings. That includes reading assigned articles, answering reflection questions, and collecting data or artifacts. There is no textbook for participants that they're required to purchase for this course. It's all articles that I will provide. The third component are application activities, and these are assignments that will require the participants to apply their learning from the course in the school setting. And the application activities for this course will what they'll look like are there'll be coaching conversations where the coaches will provide feedback and then reflect on their experience. Participants are eligible to earn 1 CPD credit upon successful completion of this course. Registration is open now, but it does close on Tuesday, October 13th, so that participants can have enough time to complete the prep work for session 1. And session 1, as you can see on the flyer, takes place on Tuesday, October 27th. The links to the registration form and to the complete syllabus are on the course flyer. And then, as Heather mentioned, the flyer and syllabus are separate documents on the eCommunity. If you have any questions, you can contact me. My email is on the flyer. I will also type it in the chat. And thank you, Heather.
Sure thing.
And I see a question. Why starting synchronous sessions at 3:30 aren't finished their day by that time? So that we did. We're glad you're bringing that up. So our times we're not nailed into the 3:30 time slot. We were actually going to survey the participants at the first meeting and ask if that time was best for them.
So when we did have a conversation about if you push it later, then you run into people who need to be home to make dinner for their families. It's a catch-22. So we didn't want to go too late.
Yeah.
We felt like 4:30 to 6:30 might be a little too late for people. So yeah, we knew that we could run into that problem. But I think what we're going to do is we're going to stick to the 3:30 start time at the beginning. And then once we kind of talk to the group, we may either offer the course at 2 different times on 2 different days for people who can't make the 3:30 time. We'll work it out. So if people are interested and the 3:30 time does not work for them, they should register and let us know that the 3:30 time is not going to work for them, and we'll work out an alternative.
Yes, thank you. Sorry, I was responding and then I saw another question pop up. Debbie asked, would you mind putting a link to the flyer in the chat? It is in the eCommunity, but I can also put a link in the chat as well.
Yeah, Jen, if you don't mind doing that.
Yep, I will do that. So while Dan is coming up, I'm going to step off stage, but I will post that in the chat. So any other questions, you can email me or you can type them in the chat now. Sure thing, Debbie.
All right, so Dan, if you can come on up while Jen hops down. You're muted, Dan.
There we go. Morning, everyone. As Heather mentioned, we've been working for a better part of the summer to create these 2 courses for mentors and coaches. Jen's course is targeting more experience or all mentors and coaches, and it's focused on feedback. The course that I'm going to be presenting is a virtual course that's for recently appointed mentors and coaches, new mentors and coaches, and is more structured to their needs. We will have a required text in this one, and we're going to be using Elena Aguilera's Art of Coaching. The Supporting Teachers course will have 6 class sessions, and each one will have its own unique focus. In session 1, we're going to focus on mentor-coach reflections, which will give participants the opportunity to discuss the problem of teacher retention that many districts are facing, as well as the stages of teacher development. In session 2, we're going to look at Joanne Killian's work as we explore the many roles of the coach and mentor. In session 3, mentors and coaches will develop their own personal vision of coaching or mentoring. In session 4, we'll focus on building a trusting relationship with the clients. And in session 5, we'll examine differentiated coaching by looking at the mentoring coaching stances. Finally, in session 6, we'll examine coaching cycles and we'll talk about the phases of the various cycles. In this course also, participants can earn 1 CPD credit, and in addition to attending all 6 class sessions, they'll be required to do outside reading and reflections. The registration form is and the syllabus are both in the e-community, as well as there are links on the flyer that Heather's showing you right now. The registration deadline is the same deadline as for Jen's course. Our first class will begin on October 21st. We don't have any pre-work that has to be done for the first class, so they'll have until, like I said, the 13th to register. On the 14th, they'll be receiving specific information about the course. I believe that's it. If anyone has any questions, we can answer them in the chat box now. Go ahead.
Jen, if you will drop the link to Dan's course flyer in the chat as well, that would be helpful. You can drop a link to both.
Great, thanks, Jen, and thanks, Heather.
Sure. Okay, so any questions for Jen or Dan about their courses, you can just drop those in the chat. And if not, we will move on to our next agenda item, which is just any general questions that you have about Title II, professional learning, anything you want to talk with us about. Debbie asked if there's maximum enrollment, and the answer is no. Remo, we can support up to 800 people, so I think it's 800, maybe it's 500. It's gigantic, the capacity of the platform. So we're gonna just see how it goes with as many people as we want. As many people as register, we're gonna accept. Okay, so any other questions, you can either type them in the chat or you can just say, pick me, and I will bring you up on stage, and you can ask your question out loud if there are any questions that you want to chat about before we dismiss today. Okay, it doesn't look like anything's coming up. If you are working on a question, continue to type it out. I'll stay on for a few more minutes and respond to any questions that pop up. I do just want to drop a couple of reminders here. Your Appendix D, the first draft, is due on October 15th. Remember, that gets submitted with your LEX plan or your reopening plan, recovery plan, continuity of learning plan. There's all different names for them. So remember that your Appendix D is due at that time. A lot of you have already submitted them for feedback. If you're a smaller district, we're able to turn that feedback around pretty quickly. But those of you who are in a larger district, you know, those documents are pretty long, 50, 60, 70 pages. So they take us quite a long time to give you feedback, and we do appreciate your patience as we're working to provide feedback to those of you who are in those bigger districts. Also, a reminder on 10/31, the FY19 final report is due if you did not extend your FY19 grant until next September. Remember, you had that option to extend. If you did not take that option, then the final report is due on 10/31. Now, our next briefing, we don't have the date set in stone because, again, we are having a special speaker come. The next briefing, we're going to have presenters from RAND come to share some of their research findings and implications for professional learning on their most recent report that was released regarding the alignment between professional learning, quality materials, teacher evaluation, and student assessments. And when all of those components are aligned, what happens? And what happens when those components are not aligned? So we are waiting on confirmation. The two dates that we pitched out to them that we're hoping will work for them are December 3rd or December 10th. So you may want to put a hold on your calendar for those mornings. The briefing will likely happen before noon. We like to try to keep it before lunchtime. So if you want, put a hold on your calendars for those 2 mornings. And as soon as we get that confirmation from RAND, we'll send out the exact dates to you. But if there are no other questions, I'm going to just hang out here for a few minutes. I hope you guys got some valuable information from this workshop today. And again, if you have questions for Cindy or Christine that they weren't able to answer, you can send them to me, or you can send those questions directly to Christine or Cindy. So I hope everyone's school year is going well and that you have a great rest of your week. I will stay here if there are any questions. Otherwise, you guys can log off, and you can log off just by clicking out of Remo. I will send this recording to all of you as well.